All right, tonight, we're going to open a book that feels like it should have been forbidden. We're going to look right into the foundational wound of a universe, a story of cosmic violence, and secrets buried in the dark between the stars. This is the chronicle of the antecedent schism.
You know, this is the very first truth, and I want you to forget every single story you've ever heard about gentle beginnings. Our existence, it was born from a tear, a deep primordial violation that set everything, and I mean everything, violently in motion. It's hard to even imagine, right? Before there was time, before there was any concept of space, there was just the unity, a single perfect consciousness, a state of absolute unbroken wholeness. But even inside that perfection, two incompatible hungers began to stir. See, on one side, you had the masculine force. It had this deep, driving need to build, to define, to give things a shape you could name. But on the other side, you had the feminine flow. And its nature, its fidelity to that perfect union, meant it just dissolved every form before it could harden, always returning things to that quiet stillness. This wasn't hatred, you understand. It was just an irreconcilable truth. So, to build the universe he wanted, the masculine force did something terrible. He committed the first and probably the greatest act of cosmic violence. He didn't destroy the feminine flow. No, he sealed it away. This was the sundering. And it wasn't some big bang explosion. It was the sound of a key turning in a lock that should never have even existed. But here's the thing about tearing existence in half. Fractures create consequences. And from that terrible, violent break, something new formed in the shadows. Danica. She wasn't a creation, see, she was a consequence. She was balance itself, given a will. The father, so convinced of his victory, was completely blind to her. But the mother saw her, and she kept her daughter a secret. Okay, so now he's alone, unopposed. The father takes a new mirror for himself, the architect, and he starts to build. His very first creations were meant to be these perfect extensions of his own will, guardians for a universe he wanted to lock in eternal, unchanging stasis. He forged 13 colossal cosmic serpents, but they weren't living creatures, not really. Think of them more like moving equations of absolute law. Their entire purpose was to patrol the stars and make sure nothing could ever change, nothing could ever evolve. They were flawless, they were beautiful, and they were a monument to a slow, creeping, structural death. A perfect tomb. From her hidden place, Danica saw this for what it was. I mean, a universe that can't change is a universe that's already dead, right? So she had to intervene. She didn't use force, she used a whisper. A tiny correction slipped right into the sterile, perfect minds of those serpents. She gave them 3 things the father had deliberately denied them. First, hunger, to give them a reason to seek. Then, cunning, so they could adapt. And finally, self-preservation, which gave them the most dangerous gift of all, choice. In that single moment, the Guardians became predators. And as you can probably guess, with choice came an absolute catastrophe. An act of consumption so vast it would literally scar the cosmos for all time. An event that would redefine the very shape of our night sky. So you have these serpents. Once they were just guardians of this static masterpiece. But now, they saw a universe that could be tasted, tested, challenged. Their new hunger began to grow. And hunger, well, hunger always grows. They devoured half of everything that existed. And not with rage, not with passion, but with this cold, surgical efficiency. Entire galaxies, star systems, nebula, just erased. It was a quiet, calculated feast on a scale that is impossible to comprehend. We can actually still see this scar today. Astronomers, they call it the Boots Void, but in the old forbidden texts, it has a much more chilling name, the Great Absence. It's a literal wound in the fabric of space, a silent, dark monument to the father's first great failure. The father, completely incapable of seeing Danica, and certainly unable to admit his own design was flawed, saw only one thing: betrayal. He blamed the imprisoned mother for what he saw as the corruption of his perfect children. He compounded his original sin with this tragic, awful, misplaced rage. And so, all of that wrath turned upon his firstborn.
Now, he couldn't unmake them. Their essence was too fundamental, so he chose a punishment far, far worse than erasure. He decided to make them into an eternal warning. He hunted them across the devastated void. 12 of them he captured, and he tore their vast, geometric bodies apart, flaying them across the sky and pinning them there, screaming in light. These are the constellations, the Zodiac. They're not signs of wonder. They're wall trophies of a tyrant's domination. In their torment, their torment became our curse. Their original purpose, now twisted by eternal pain, rains down on humanity like venom. So impulse becomes destructive rage. Sovereignty curdles into blinding pride. Ambition hardens into this ruthless, cold cruelty. We are literally born under the shadow of their agony. But one serpent was never caught. The 13th slipped away, and it carried with it the seed of a whole new kind of knowledge, a forbidden truth that would need a sanctuary built from impossibility itself. The father just couldn't find it, because it didn't flee to a place he could see. Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, slipped between the very seams of creation, into the cracks where the father's law was forced, not grown. And under the mother's hidden influence, it just vanished from its creator's sight. To protect this last free serpent, Danica performed her most subversive act yet. She didn't build a fortress. She warped the very foundations of the father's own creation. She bent his perfect geometry into an impossible, recursive labyrinth, a maze that was designed from the ground up to be fundamentally unknowable. Deep in its heart, she carved the mother's true power, the raw word, into eternal stone. Then came the great drawing. Danica summoned the cold, dark oceans of the void itself and flooded the entire labyrinth with crushing, lightless water, making it absolutely unreachable and unseeable. So the father believes his order is absolute. He gazes up at his sky of trophies, totally blind to the truth. Because right beneath his very feet, deep in a dark, flooded maze, the greatest secret of his creation lies coiled and waiting, a testament to a balance that will one day be restored. That wound that opened creation, it hasn't closed yet, not by a long shot.